everyone, welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today we're going to be doing a indie author spotlight. I have with us today, he has a new book coming out spring of next year, tentatively. It's called Backwaters 12 Murky Tales, and it's published by the Montag Press out of San Francisco. I have with us today author Lee Roselle. Lee, how's it going, my friend?
And I'm feeling great. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really enjoying your interviews and how you're connecting with this community and meeting all these creatives. Uh, it's an honor and I appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend. And listen, it's an honor to me because I love horror and I love shining a spotlight on any and everyone in horror. So, Lee, tell us a little bit about Backwaters 12 Murky Tales.
Well, at its heart, Backwaters is about fish monsters. It combines a little psychological horror, body horror, and a, a couple of paranoid conspiracy theories in a way that I think will be fun for our horror, weird, and bizarro audience. Um, it's a cross between like The Fly and then some Get Out, and also like Dr. Moreau thrown in there. You
Hmm.
know, so basically the story is when you're reading the stories, you think, well, these aren't connected necessarily; they're contained, but little by little. You feel like things start to relate to each other, and the further you get in, the more the puzzle pieces start to kind of come together, right? Uh,
Hmm.
and so there are people from all walks of life. There's a barber who's like, the first story is about a barber, and he tells all sorts of peculiar, far flung supernatural tales. And the people around in the community are sitting there just eating it up and um, and they're like, bullshit, tell another story. And so from that, another story comes and another story comes. So you got a barber, an EPA agent, a hooligan who, you know, just has this sort of, you know, this, you know, the chains and the big coats, and he's a also a paralegal who's really meticulous. Kelly Keith Fredericks. You've got a lawyer, a college professor, all kinds of townspeople, and a whole lot of preachers wearing luchador masks, and they're all gravitating around a mystery, an encroaching ecological horror, right?
Hmm.
It's like, what's wrong with the water? Why is it making people delusional, homicidal? Why does that man suddenly have scales under his armpits? Are genitals coming out of his chest? Why are there gunfights between husbands and wives out by the lake? And so through this sort of carnival of characters in short stories, a pattern starts to emerge that I think people will find entertaining.
Now, Lee, I've had a chance to read a little bit, and I was telling you beforehand, it's a little. There's a warning on it, I mean, it's a little tense. There's a little some aspects are a little disturbing. Now, was that your intention for the audience to disturb them a little bit?
Um, I think, okay, I believe that you, as a, to say the thing you cannot say and show the unshowable is the job of the artist. And I think it's also the delight of the horror writer, right?
Yes.
Um, the horror community sees itself, I think a lot of us are, we say metal, right?
Hmm.
We also like metal music for what it says to the rest of the world, but we're more like an offset of punk, actually, right? We're more like shock, shock art. Um, and a lot of those 20th century transgressive elements that basically said blank you to the stultifying mainstream, right? So it
Hmm.
sees itself as kind of a resistance
I agree.
to a lot of the cultural pressures that would whitewash and sanitize and pull the taboos and the pleasure and the pain out of a reading experience. And it's like it's the immaturity of it that gets me. Like it's
It
the
just,
total immaturity of that. And like on
mhm.
slasher, there's a whole bunch of people who are just having a good time and they
Hmm.
want to provoke you. They
Yes.
want to make you go, oh, that's
It,
that's fun. And so like those are the people I want to wink and nod um, when I write, And another thing, I want to get close enough to the kind of edge to where it's concerning, right? But pull back in time for it to not sort of fall over into like exploitation. I've never
yes.
seen Last House on the Left. I don't like that those sorts of.
I don't either.
I like to. I feel when I'm reading horror, I like to feel that the writer has my best interests. You
Hmm.
know, Dario Argento, not included in this. I know Dario Argento does not have my best interest, wants to just completely drop worms all over me, and I
Yeah.
accept that. But usually, I want the horror author to ultimately not want to hurt me or
Hmm.
disturb me in a way that's not that's not significant and that's not heartfelt and that's not ultimately for the service of good.
And I agree with you. When it comes to horror in general, whether it be in writing or your movies, it's always been meant to offend a little bit and then pull back. And that's one of the pleasures of horror. You're like, like you just said, did that just happen or did that? And then it's all for entertainment.
Right.
Now, now, how long has it from start to finish writing that has it taken you to get to almost a completion point of Backwaters?
Well, it's a interesting kind of juggling thing that I do. I teach at a university, and I have a career in like literary criticism. I've written a couple of books, that nonfiction books that deal with that. And so it's like you have these batteries that are next to each other. One of them is your like nonfiction battery, and one of them is your fiction battery. And it's like as you are using up your nonfiction battery, right? Or that all of a sudden your creative stuff is kind of wanting to come out. And so
Hmm.
once you get to the point where you're depleted with that, then you jump in and start writing fiction, and so there's this perpetual balance. So I might be editing a short story and then move right into starting to do a close reading of a novel that I'm going to put in my other book. And so it takes a long time. And I find that for me at this point, the most fun part of the best part of the process is when it is 8/10 of the way done. And I'm taking that word that's kind of there to fit the image together, and I'm
Hmm.
twisting it into something that's a little bit more um, wrongish, a little bit more peculiar, a little bit richer, right? And so it's like getting close to the edge of unreadability to the point where it's like this starts to become art, right? But
Hmm.
not so twisted up that it's just me in my own room, just coming up with little nodules and clusters of language that the people like do not want to read that. I try to get to that edge, and that's fun. And so I find it hard. Like I guess I've been working on these stories for 5 or 6 years, but other stuff has come out since then. And so, and when I wrote the first story, Lyle and the Spaceman, I had no idea that it was going to transform into what it became, right? I thought that
Hmm.
there were going to be supernatural elements. I had this image of bugs coming down the black paint, like bugs and like black paint coming down the walls and getting inside people and this sort of thing, and pulling them out and making them disappear. And it's like later on, I realized that these roaches and these bugs were actually had nano. They were like a way to do like battlefield operations on people. And
Hmm.
so they were like part of this nano enhanced organizational body. But when I wrote it the first time, I was just enjoying the image of the bug, that kind of thing. And it started to transform into something that could fit together as a short story collection, right? And one of my workshop friends, and I have a few three really close friends. I've been a long-standing workshop for 15 years and looked over it again and again, and they're so nice, it's so helpful and everything. And just one of them slipped and like called it a novel, and I was like, I like that. I really like
Hmm.
that because I never had any intention of it forming like that. But it's not a novel. There's the last work in there is called Hydromaniacs. It is a novelette. It's the length of a novelette, and it brings everything kind of together. But it's not a this is not a novel, you know.
Now, Lee, I know it's probably hard to write a novel, which is one story all the way through. But I
Mhm.
can imagine it's harder or it's more challenging to write several short stories, but not only write several short stories, but to eventually have all of them come together to tell
Mhm.
one story. Was
Yeah,
that challenging for you?
it the first half a dozen stories I didn't quite intend for them to fit together. I didn't know that they fit together. I was try, you know, I was, for when I was younger, it's like the novel. I want to do the novel. It's the novel. And then, what I realized is that after I did a novel, but I wanted some more engagement. I wanted to get back out there with the audience. I wanted to send stuff off. The idea of writing for 5 years and then finally sending one document in did not fit for me right then because I teach at a small liberal arts college where there's a big teaching load. So therefore, I need to, whenever I I have to bring it in with time. And
Hmm.
so I'm like, okay, I can crank out a short story. But before I really realized that a, a, a character emerged in the background of this story. Actually, a couple, right? And that sort of overshadowed and sort of in the distant, like a distance, like a specter that related to these characters. And I got more interested in that character. Didn't really talk about that character much or those characters, but I realized this is what it was about. Um, a, um, ultimately a scientist or two scientists who are doing some really, really bizarre stuff in the watershed, and they're using the watershed as an experimental. Like they're just leaking stuff out, and there are things out there in the water that the EPA would find very dangerous, very illegal. And so this company basically gets caught and bankrupted, and then they're kind of go rogue down in
Hmm.
Alabama. And so that's kind of where the pieces started connect.
Okay,
And I just sort of became entranced with this character.
this character. Now, is it hard as an author not to put yourself into your work as
Mhm.
as the characters ones?
Right. I mean, I the first thing I realized when I started trying to write fiction is that if I start off with an idea like a didactic plan about either expressing a political view or expressing like an idea that's like an ism, an ideological position, something that's constructed with language, it's going to be complete horseshit, right? And so I follow like the idea that from David Lynch, who talks about an idea. And right when you're writing nonfiction, an idea or a thesis or whatever you want to call it is like is a concept constructed in language. In fiction, an idea is like a time. You have to be there.
Hmm.
You have to live, inhabit that place, and you have to have a feeling for that place. You have to go. You actually have to be in such a state that you spend time with these characters, right? And that is something that if you can get into that world, then the book kind of writes itself, in some
Yeah.
way. So an idea has nothing at all to do with, concepts. It has something to do with experience. And then it's authentic. Because if you
Hmm.
know that character, I spend a lot of time on my characters before I let them anywhere near a laptop. Sometimes
Hmm.
in the car, they think I'm talking on a Bluetooth, and I'm like I'm that character talking to that character. Yeah. And so once I start to create kind of a story, then those characters and that place, the landscape or the buildings or something like that is real, right?
Hmm.
That does not mean that I don't find myself in these moments. Like, I try to model a character after other people, but I find like in sometimes in an offhanded way, revealing something deep about myself in a character that I'm too afraid to face about myself. So I'll put it on like Ronnie,
Yeah.
in the story or something like that. And Ronnie, of course, is the guy in the short story collection who is thrown from the back of a moving ambulance. He's the
Hmm.
EMT who is, and he gets, somebody records it in the back, and he becomes the most famous viral star down in this part of Alabama because the person throws him out of the back of the ambulance. He bounces. He does not roll under the automobile, which is lucky for him. He
Yeah.
winds up in a ditch and ultimately survives to try to sue everybody and this sort of thing. So maybe there's a little bit of me and Ronnie. Ronnie also has a
That's
Fu
funny.
Manchu mustache and a little jacket and a little pudgy and that kind of thing. So uh, if you want to look at some confessional stuff, you might look at this poor character here.
I'm gonna check out Ronnie now. so, so Lee, you wear multiple hats. You work a full time job at university. You also do some side work. How do you manage your time
Mhm,
to make sure that you can actually put time towards your craft, your projects?
mhm.
How
That's
do
great.
you?
I mean, it's a really important question. And kind of growing up is doing more with less and less here and less time. And so at some point, in my career, I was like 10 years into my job, and the idea was, oh, I cannot wait till summer until I can sit down and write. So now I'm being a professor, right? And then
Mhm.
boom, all of a sudden I get really sloppy. I put on the, Twisted Sister t-shirt on backwards. I get the coffee, and that
Mhm.
kind of thing. And I really bang out the Great American, but basically that just doesn't work anymore. I get up every morning at, you know, somewhere between 5 and 6 before work, and I put 30 minutes in at least every day. And that's the first thing that I do while I still have something, by around noon, my nog, and I've been teaching a lecture or something like that. I'm pretty much,
Right.
pretty much done. I go into an upper level class where they're so smart, they just take over the conversation and I nod knowingly. So it's like they pay for that 30 minutes there, by having to like do the presentations and stuff. But yeah, I work really diligently every day, for 30 minutes. And then in the summer, I do a little bit more. And so when you put that all together over the course of a year, it's a lot. There's a lot more writing going on than staying in dissertation mode all summer long.
Mhm.
And so it's this sort of a Buddhist thing. I'm just doing this. It's not a lot. Today, working on the tail end of this short story collection, I went and got my ellipsis, searching for my ellipses. And there's a little space. I looked at my other book. There's a space before and after the ellipses. And I spent like 15, 20 minutes going through the whole book, making sure there was a space on one side and the other side.
So,
And so then, tomorrow I might be looking at, words that need hyphens or capitalizations. And so that's a I don't like that part of the game, honestly. I'm ready to just hand it over. But, you know, this is part of the making sure that when it gets out, that I don't look at it. I don't care if anybody else sees it, but if I turn to page 30 and there's like a comma in the wrong place, I'm just gonna feel like doom until the day I die. I'll hate it.
Lee, I'm the same way. Like even with my YouTube channel, the hard part is not the interviews. It's not the filming. The hard part is the editing process.
Mhm.
And you know, when I'm making, the tags or the titles cards, I'm spelling people's names right or their projects right. I listen, it's happened that I've gotten that message, hey, you spelled my name wrong.
Yeah.
So it's the detail stuff that is the pain, but
Mhm.
it's the stuff that can make and break you.
Yeah. And that's the part where I have to slow down. It's like the idea that, I need to crank this out. I need to hurry, hurry, hurry.
Hmm.
It's like I hurried so much in my 30s that everything was kind of crappy. It's like the quality of the work was not as good because I wanted to, produce X amount or this amount of page word count and all that. Now it's just I'm going to put in my time. I'm going to go for quality. I'm going to do what I can, and keep this little schedule, and a body of work will come. And it's the same in your situation. Your body of work is building right now, and I've noticed that the quality of the production, is high, and so it's necessary. It's boring though, to
It's
me. It's like I don't want to do it.
because for the longest time when I first started my interviews, I started because people on YouTube attention spans are short. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so I would rush through interviews. I'm like, oh, this is getting to 15 minutes. People check out after 15 minutes, and then but the quality wasn't great. So like now I'm like, however long this interview goes, if it's good, there's going to be some people who like it, and some people are going to watch it to the end. So I want to put the best product out possible. I don't want to rush through the interview. I want the best product out possible. I don't care if it's an hour long, hour and a half long. There's going to be some
Right.
people out there who are going to watch it. Majority of people are not, but I want every single one of my interviews to be the best and most authentic as possible.
That's right. And this idea that you're always trying to do the fast next thing is like that that might mean that 5 years in the future that people won't find it interesting because it's like you say, it's kind of poorly produced, it's kind of on a rush job. It will be forgotten. But if you do something and then later on, it's like some of these directors, are already there, and some of them are going to they're going to make it, and then your interview will be part of the lexicon for that film or that franchise or that series. And so you don't want to be back there, I tell you what, I should have, you know, wish I'd have edited that damn thing. I
Exactly.
guess you could go back and edit it, but then it would be like, whatever.
Yeah,
But
I'm
but yeah,
avoid.
I understand exactly what you're
hmm
saying. Yeah.
I done interviewed like the next Wes Craven, and I don't rush through the interview. Like
Mhm.
it's like
Yeah,
no.
definitely, definitely. So
So,
yeah, I understand.
but yeah, what but something you were talking about, like a lot of new, I mean, indie filmmakers and a lot of new authors, or even established authors who haven't made it to that point yet, they have to work full time jobs,
Hmm.
and I can imagine it's hard to juggle
Hmm.
your creativity and then your actual full time job because there was a time that being an author or a filmmaker, that was your full time gig, and
Right.
you just struggled until, but you can't do that in 2023.
Hmm. Well, I spent the first half of my kind of working life fantasizing about, oh, if I could only be in my house the whole time by myself, not being challenged to speak in front of people and not have to put on clothes and have deadlines and stuff like that. And boy, how wonderful that would be. And then COVID hit, and I had that opportunity, and I was depressed. I was like, you know, it was body horror, man. I mean, I was like,
Yeah.
there were cheese curls just attached to me, and beer breath, and it was just miserable. And so I came out of it. I'm like working with these students, these really sharp students at the University of Montevallo, down in the dead center of Alabama. This is a privilege. And, I don't have to do a Kickstarter if my gallbladder falls off or something like that,
Yeah.
because at least I have, those sorts of things covered. So I realized, like, you got it good. Enjoy,
hmm
enjoy the balance and everything. And so I don't really, luckily, I don't, COVID made that problem. It caused a lot of other problems, but it made that problem go away. That fantasy of, oh, if I could just, sit back and have my own
Be at home all the
schedule.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was miserable. It was just miserable.
I'm telling you what, right now, and I give credit to anybody who does it. I cannot work from home. I can't do remote work.
Hmm.
I'm not motivated. It
Yeah,
doesn't motivate me. I have to put on clothes. I have to go somewhere.
yeah.
Like it motivates me. If I'm sitting home all day, it's
Hmm.
I'm gonna be taking naps and watching Tubi all day.
Definitely. No doubt about it. Yeah.
So, wait, to any new authors out there, horror author, they're trying to get started or they're about to get started. What's one piece of advice you can give them right now in the year 2023?
Hmm. Um, I guess the advice that I would give is that there are a lot of venues where you can take your idea and find an audience. And it might be in the form of a episodic, like, podcast type thing, or not an episodic podcast, but an anthology podcast. It might be on your own blog. Like, there's this idea that, like, I'm holding this work, and if it's not in Nightmare Magazine or something like that, um, then it's a waste. And I'm saying you have to kind of throw it out there at the venue. If they like you, if they accept you, if they like your work, it is a success. Then you can republish it in a different venue later. So it's like, start where it's comfortable, where people enjoy reading your work, and then get engaged, And unlike, literary, you know, academia and some of these other uh, sort of worlds, the horror community is a it's a nice, comforting, fun place to be. And so if you stay with it, somebody will help you. Somebody will see something in your work. And so you got to be out there. You got to be present. You've got to put stuff out occasionally, and it doesn't matter if it's not like you know Playboy or something like that.
Yeah. Like, real quick, I just want to give a quick shout out to the Slasher app. The Slasher app is amazing. That's how
Yeah,
you and I met. It's a great place that, for authors, filmmakers, fans, all the network, and it's a great
definitely,
place.
definitely so. And there are, I get up, and usually I've always been peevish about social media. I never had Facebook. I never and then I tried to do Twitter and X, right? And it's like the party just left the room. Like everybody left, and I came in, and it feels like, and I enjoy it. There are people I like to interact with, and there are a lot of interesting things popping in from based on the people that I'm following, but it feels a bit like business. It feels a bit like everybody's a shark,
Hmm.
and there are sharks out there in slasher land. I include myself one of them, but I'm also a fan, and I also love the conversation, and I also love the cheekiness and the irreverence and the pushing the boundaries, and like I said, like the total immaturity of it, that I'm going back and I'm like, I like these people,
Hmm.
and it's a different feel. It's rewarding. I feel like a fan. I feel like I have a community, and it's like within a really short amount of time, I have like 20 times more friends than I have followers on X. So I found a place that kind of accepts my sort of nutty missives when I'm throwing stuff out there. Somebody's gonna be encouraging about it, and
Yes,
so that's nice,
it
you know.
is. All right. So here's a tough question. Are you ready?
No,
Okay.
yeah, I'm ready. Okay, okay. This time I'm ready.
All
Yeah.
right. All right. So a lot of new horror authors are going the self-publishing route. They're going
Mhm.
through Amazon, print on demand, or print on purchase. So would you recommend a brand new author to go that route, self-publishing?
Mhm. Um, that's a that I that is a hard question.
It is.
You know, I I kind of feel like small presses, you have like so many wonderful, great, Flame Tree and Eraserhead Press and all of these they're like not in the big five, but
Hmm.
people who are in the know about Centipede Press, all these presses that are so cool. Um, you know, I think that, and I think Montag Press and my publisher is sort of like, they're over here, they're micro niche press, so they're doing other interesting stuff, and I'm so thankful that I got the opportunity to have a publisher accept my work and work with me, and you know, um, and my editor um, is like on the West Coast and is working in the middle of the night. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning in Alabama, So it's like it's always happening once we start working. So it's like when it's good, that's great. But here's what I think, you know, for even for people who are publishing in the from what I gather from the big five publishers and all that, there's a lot of responsibility and onus on the author to promote. I
Yes.
think the idea is you have to take a part, you have to be part of the promotional process, regardless if you are where you are. And I'm not putting it one here and one down here. There are so many, like, space opera authors and science fiction authors who are like, no, I'm gonna publish my work on Kindle and go Kindle Unlimited and make all kinds of money. And I don't want that. And I want to do my own thing. And I'll throw it out there. And then my audience will like edit the thing for me. And it's like, it's a wonderful for them. It's like a wonder, like, and there are people just like reading this 900-page, thing, and fantasy too, And so it's hard to make that distinction. Sometimes I think the distinction is more in terms of the ego than the experience of writing and the experience of getting it out there. I say if you had a novel, like a 60,000 word horror novel that you've been working on, and you passed it around to every publisher and agent and everybody, and they just kind of passed it over, I'd rewrite the book first. And then I'd start trying to send some like small stuff out and try to get people to notice me, because I mean what they say is maybe true. It's like it's about the platform too.
Hmm.
They were looking for somebody who's going to be able to deliver every once in a while, and somebody who's going to not just go to sleep while the thing is hanging there at the publisher, right? And so you have to prove that to them. You have to prove that to the publishers. And one way that you can prove it is to publish and market in a book, on Kindle or something like that. And if you do that, and they're like, damn, look at this, look at the cover, look at how well it's edited, look at where it is on the rankings. I see it on BookBub. I see it over here on e-reader, etc. Look at how their blog is like doing this and that.
Hmm.
Then they might turn their attention to you. And my father, who's written many uh, self-published Southern sort of spectacles and everything, he's like, do I need an agent? I said, yeah, when one of them calls you and says, let's work together. Right. And
Hmm.
so I guess that would be my suggestion.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean that's the big thing right now in the horror um, novel industry. So I think I'm saying that right.
Mhm.
But it's a lot more self-publishing, and I just saw that you have a publisher. I was like, that's interesting because a
Mhm.
majority of the authors I interview don't have a publisher. They do it themselves.
Mhm.
I didn't know if there was a pros or cons.
I think that if the if the word gets out and and people are talking about it and you're promoting it and it's working, and if you learn how to do that, let me know. And and people are buying it, then it's a success, and then you have a better chance. I mean, it's not about this particular book and where it ends up. I mean, there have been, I guess, self-published books that were later snapped up by a press as part of a three-part set or anything
Hmm.
else. And so I guess you just have to figure out how to be flexible and stay kind of relevant, because um, there's a lot of stuff always coming out, and there's so much stuff to choose from, and some of that stuff is going to be self-published. So I would grab, if I saw something that intrigued me, the place that describes where it's published is about 8/10 of the way down the page. right? I'm looking at the cover like everybody else, looking at the tagline, looking at the blurbs. And so you see Stephen Graham Jones says this is the shit, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, let me see. S.A. Cosby likes this. I'm like, okay, if he, it doesn't matter who published it.
Yeah.
I'm more interested. And so I guess yeah, that's it. It's not the first thing you see. Therefore, maybe it's not as, maybe you've got, the right blurb, and then it doesn't matter, So it's
See,
complex.
I actually buy a lot of self-published horror novels, but the only reason I buy them is not because I see them on Amazon or anything like that. It's because I'm at horror conventions often, and the author engages with me and
Hmm.
says, "Hey, come check out my book." And I'm like, "Oh," and then he tells me what the book is about. I'm like, "Oh, that sounds interesting."
Hmm.
But like, that's self-promoting.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that to some degree, all authors, horror authors, and otherwise who are who have a product have to do some kind of version of that, and that's part of the pleasure, I would guess. You know,
Hmm.
it's sort of like if you look on your Amazon rankings and they're like looking pretty flaccid and that kind of thing. It's like I'm not going to sell any fewer. If I go out to an event and hand a few out, if I sell one at a reading, or an event where I give a little talk, then that's another book out there. Maybe they'll see what I am or other authors are bringing to this game that's new and original and interesting, and then there'll be somebody out there who genuinely, like, that's their twist, and they're like, I like that.
I
And
agree.
then it doesn't matter. Then it's like you did it. It could be one person, it could be, you know
I 100%
1100.
agree.
you
I mean,
know
there's so many authors that I'm fans of right now. I'm telling you that if they would just stayed at home and left it on Amazon or social media, I would never bought their books. I would never knew who they were. But the fact that I was somewhere and they talked to me and they told me about their story and about their book, it just I became a fan. And then
hmm
I purchased the book, and then every time now anytime they make a book, I mean they're on my watch list.
hmm there you
So
go.
and it's the old school marketing.
Yeah, definitely so. And the good news about that is, if you keep your ear to the ground, something is always happening in that
Hmm.
venue, something somewhere. And I'm close enough to Atlanta or Birmingham that when it's happening, then I have the opportunity to do that. And when this short story collection comes out, I'm definitely going to do it. I think the novel is more of a Southern Gothic type, half comedy, half satire of reality television. And there's some horror in it, but I don't think it doesn't quite hit the audience that I'm a part of, and that's a genuine expression of what I'm trying to do right now.
Now, what was there something in your new book that you were about to put in to the book and you were like, "Oh, that's taking it a little too far over the line"?
Yeah, I mean, my editor said something like, "Let's not double down on the creepy here." You know, I want to. I mean, I come from like a Southern culture where, you know, twisted tales are sort of fiendishly told around the back porch, or they get worse and worse. And like,
Hmm.
I can remember that there was some sense of reality there, and it's usually lurid, sexual, and perverse.
Hmm.
And then and then there's gunplay, and then by the time like 10 years have passed, it is completely so
Out of
blown
control.
out of
Yeah.
proportion that the kids can't hear this, and so I think I have my tongue and my cheek when I do some of this, you know, and some of the snippets that I gave you, you know, were perhaps some of the uh, more graphic portions
Yeah.
of like this was like boom, but there was a lot of lead up here, you know. I mean,
Okay.
if you had 76,000 words of that, I think, you know, I mean, I think Chuck Palahniuk can pull it off. You know, David Wong can kind of do it, but I
Uh-huh.
think I need to take a breather. You know, I mean, I want to get I have the sort of folksy humor to fall back on and then go back
Yeah. You should
into
start
the
going into a dark area at that point.
which one are you? I want to know which one messed you up like that. I want to know which one of those passages
I'm gonna
uh,
tell you exactly which
caused you
one.
to have
I'm
such a
gonna,
response. Huh?
I'm gonna tell you exactly which one. I actually circled it a little bit. I actually circled it. Of course, this app is not working now. Hold on a sec. No, but I was like, at first, I don't know why. I mean, you listen. I was looking at your profile picture, and you look like a
Yes.
nice guy. I'm not saying you're not a nice guy, but I was like, okay, this guy
What's
is a little
wrong with
fucking.
that
I was like, this guy's a little fucking twisted. I was like, okay, I didn't see that fucking coming.
Yes.
um, the hydromaniacs.
All right. And could you? I mean, for your audience, could you give at least a detail about what is going on in that passage that you think caused you to sort of recoil in that way? What actually what image struck you as being, because that's very exciting to me.
Okay, I'm gonna.
So,
Can I read a little bit or?
please,
Oh,
yes.
okay, okay, all right.
No, don't read my work.
Okay. No, I didn't even know if you wanted. Okay, yeah, but okay.
Bring it on.
Okay. Before I dared to pull back the sheet, I noticed his forehead, nostril, ears, caked with more of those tiny Bosworth tubes. When I see his chest, I fight the urge to run because his breasts are choked with clusters of those wrinkling shafts. I realize that the tubes, in fact, are human penises in various stages of erection.
Yes.
And I'm
And
reading this, and I'm reading this, and I'm like, where the fuck is he going? I'm like, what is I'm like, okay, like erect penises in his chest. I was like, this is not the guy who is in this picture who wrote this shit.
it follows a logical procession. Basically, there is a character in a previous story who, because of his relationship to the water in that area, actually becomes impregnated and gives birth to a creature that I personally am too afraid to describe right now. And then and then the other guy, he's at the dorm and suddenly something happens to him of the same sort. So there are reproductive problems that emerge from the water, and you just keep taking like what is going to happen, and suddenly like in one of those characters, his bib, the boy in the blue blazer is the character. He finds a dangling penis under his armpit, and then it's like, okay, well, I write in 10, 20,000 more words. I'm like, okay, this guy's got the same problem. And then it gets a little, maybe a little out of hand. And how he's destroyed there and how he is massacred is even more troubling, because a woman puts on a luchador mask, removes her clothes, and stimulates him to the point where he basically ejaculates to death. Now I just probably most of the audience is probably going to say just like, okay, mark that book off my list.
Yeah, that,
But it's
I
like
was about to
it's
purchase. I
yeah,
was about to purchase this,
just
but
that
thanks,
one
Lee and Travis.
little moment. Otherwise, it's traditional horror. So yeah.
Lee, all right. How can everyone find you, my friend?
Well, I have a website and a blog that I'm posting, and what I'm doing right now is leeroselle.com. I'm also can be found pretty readily on the University of Montevallo website. Um, right now, I'm every few days or every week I'm posting a small review of the best short stories in weird horror and bizarro fiction on my
Nice.
blog. And I'm also like using a version of that on Slasher as well. So you can contact me via the Slasher app. You can there's a on my website there's a place where you can send me an email, or you can just find my campus email and catch me there. I definitely um, uh, value the opportunity to talk to people, collaborate with people, have fun talking about horror and bizarro and gothic fiction. And so please feel free to drop me a line. I'd be more than happy to to talk to you about ideas and you know um, in my book. So yeah.
Everyone, he's one of the nicest guy. Like I message him and just message me back. Pleasant, class act.
Thank you.
Now, Lee, when your book does come out, please let me know and hold me a copy. I want to read
Excellent.
the full thing.
Definitely. So I'll be begging you for some Amazon blurbage there.
Yes.
And even if it's terrible, even if it's like this, just whatever, I'll be like,
Yeah,
I'll be.
there's a lot of dicks in this book.
The problem is that the narrative plot is like in diminishing number. They get smaller and smaller and fewer as the book goes on. You hit an important part of the plot there.
All right. Listen, everybody, please follow Lee. Please also look out next year for Backwaters 12 Murky Tales. Lee, once again, man, it's been an absolute pleasure. If you ever want to come back on, man, just hit me up. I'll be talking to you in the
Definitely.
Slasher app too. So
Yes,
it
definitely
was an
so.
absolute pleasure, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you. This was a lot of fun, and I appreciate your time. And I hope we collaborate down the road a piece. Definitely so. You're doing
Oh,
great
once the
stuff.
book, I was about to say, once the book comes out and I read the whole book, I'm gonna have you back on. So,
Excellent. That's great.
yep, I'm
Definitely.
definitely gonna
I'll
have you
be
back
in
on.
super launch mode during that time, so I'll be begging you to let me come back and waggle that book around. So
Yep.
definitely.
As soon as that bad boy comes out, just let me know, and I'm gonna read it, and I'm gonna have you back on.
Thank you so much. I
No problem.
appreciate it.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.